Welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans.
This is Lisa Pesnichak.
And I'm Sarah Beckner, and we're here to deep dive into the fascinating world of astrology.
We offer monthly forecasts based on the new moon charts looking at world astrology.
Using both neoclassical and Uranian astrology techniques.
In addition to the forecasts, we offer blind chart readings, interviews with notable guests, and much more.
So keep listening as we bring you Insight for Humans.
Hello, everybody. Sarah and I are here today doing our first blind chart reading with Jena Thompson, and we're so excited to be here. This has been something that's been on our schedules for quite a while, and we're finally able to make it work. Anything you want to say, Sarah?
So this is essentially a blind chart reading. We don't know all the details of Jenna's life, and we're doing this in homage to one of our great teachers, Michael Bryan, who does these readings really as a demonstration of astrology. So I did want to point out that both Lisa and I work a little bit differently clinically, and if we were in a counseling session, this might look a little bit different, but we're really just trying to lay out the major themes that show up in the chart in terms of your personality, Jenna, some of your family and home life, relationship, and work. And so we're going to go through and share with you what we see, and don't hesitate to give us feedback, good, bad, or ugly.
Okay, so let's get the chart up. And Sarah, take it away.
So we always start looking at a chart just with the ascendant. And Jenna, you have your ascendant at 20 degrees Taurus, 18 minutes. So in terms of how you're showing up in the world, this Taurus rising indicates that your general mode of operation is one, or there's something in you always trying to establish your footing in some way. You may require a certain amount of comfort, of stability, of solidity. And in an effort to secure that, you may find that you show up just in a more pragmatic way and even potentially more cautious in certain ways. And it's the ruler of this ascendant, which is Venus, that really shows where a lot of your life is constellating around. And here we see it in the house of career, public reputation, public image, and legacy. And when you're a Venusian person, when you're represented by Venus in your chart, it says something about how you operate, that you are fundamentally oriented towards building relationship, towards establishing bridges of rapport, finding pleasure and connection, and doing a lot of your meaning making in this life around relationship. And of course, other Venusian themes like beauty, art, aesthetics, the tactile world may all be important to you as someone who is fundamentally connected to your environment and trying to create a sense of security for yourself and trying to create something of lasting value. And we see that Venus is in a Saturn ruled sign. And so this Venus kind of temperament is influenced by Saturn, which actually makes it a little bit more serious or earnest in terms of how you move through life. And Saturn can also mean that the themes of separation, of loss, or difficulty are familiar to you on some level. And this could be because of actual hardships that you've faced in life, or simply showing up in a mature way because you have an awareness of consequences. These are all sort of Saturn themes. Regardless, it does imply that you move through the world with a bit more caution or reserve, or even perhaps anticipating hardship on some level. And this planetary combination, Venus and Saturn, and we also see this by aspect here, this Venus-Saturn square, it can speak to separation in love and also like really enduring commitments. And it might even speak of your capacity to endure, to stay the course, and perhaps to temper your expectations of others in some way. So Venus as a standalone planet in the chart can make somebody really connected, loving, really oriented towards, like I said, the connection and the bridges of rapport. But when you see it in a Saturn ruled sign, it brings in some level of, it tempers it somewhat. It brings in some level of reserve. And like I said, that could be because of losses you've experienced, challenges you've faced, or just simply that there's a lot in your chart that says you are trying to show up and establish some kind of security for yourself in this life. In general, these are both fixed signs, and in general, fixed signs already tend towards some level of commitment. You're probably not likely to make sudden changes. You may need to take things in your own timing and come to your understanding about the world in your own way. Generally, with fixed signs, nobody's going to tell you what to think or believe about anything. You need to take your time to process things in your own way. And one potential challenge of that chart signature is that there could be a tendency to get stuck. You might adhere to certain ideas or beliefs despite evidence to the contrary. Um, and so there'd be a little caution here in your chart that says something about the necessity to remain flexible on some level and to practice just the ability to adapt, to go with the flow, to take in different points of view. And I think all of that is going to be really important for you, particularly when it comes to relationship, which is very fundamental to your chart. It's very important to you, relationship as a general theme. And it does appear to be one of those areas of life where you're learning a lot of lessons anyhow, because that Saturn, which can bring challenge and a lot of our learning in this life, is sitting on your relationship axis. Do you want me to go into relationship, Lisa, or do you want to talk a little bit about the
Just
family
do
story
it.
first?
Just jump in. You're there. You're in it.
Okay. So as far as relationship is concerned, Jena, I see some challenging dynamics in your chart. We see this Mars Saturn on the descendant, and that's one of the planetary combinations for endings or for loss. And so to see that on the relationship axis could indicate that you've suffered great loss when it comes to love in your life. It can also mean that your experience of relationship has been one of obstacles, or that relationship takes a lot of effort or work. And this planetary combination is also one of illness. So this could also say something about your relationships being impacted by illness, either you or the partner, that it comes into the relationship dynamic somehow, illness or loss. That said, your partner looks quite strong. Your partner would be represented by Mars in the seventh house. And the partner looks strong in and of himself. He's in his own house. So there's part of me that wondered, do you choose partners that somehow have the upper hand? Or is the partner strong but beset by challenges or somehow unavailable to you? Because your partner is sitting next to that planet that indicates some obstacles or some hardship or separation. When I was looking at kind of the love story in your chart, I had a lot of questions that just came to mind. And some of them were just, have you experienced conflict or separation in love? Has relationship been an area of life where you've experienced obstacles or delays, hardships, or separation? Is love an area of your life where you get stuck, maybe take things too seriously? There definitely seems to be some intensity written into that story. And I wonder if some of the challenges within relationship for you have to do with communication. Because we see, if we look at the declination table, and this is going to be some technological mumbo jumbo for you, Jena, but for the astrologers listening, when we look at the declination table, we see Mercury, Saturn parallel in the chart. And so that planetary signature can indicate that there's some level of, it can inhibit your ability to fully express yourself. It can make things feel heavier or more serious. And so I wonder if there's a piece in the relationship where the communication is challenged in some way. So that was my thoughts, Lisa, on the ascendant and the relationship axis.
Oh,
Do
beautiful.
you want to provide any feedback, Jena, before we move on to other areas of your chart?
I definitely think that I don't know if it's been a communication issue, but I have struggled with relationships. I do usually pick strong individuals, but that have a lot of issues, like they need fit. So I could try to fix them. But yeah,
So for astrologers watching, we see that the partner is represented by the ruler of the seventh house, which is Mars in Scorpio, is highly dignified there. And it's in an angular house, also making that partner very strong. But at the same time, the closest aspect in the chart is the partner sitting right next to Saturn. So that's how we see this picture where this partner shows up really strong in some way, but also challenged, also as a source of hardship.
I did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say you had talked about like endings and loss, and I did for the loss of my brother 14 years ago, which has been huge in my life. So there's that as well.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it right off the bat, but that would be one of the keywords that we use for this planetary combination. It's a combination that actually indicates death, like literal loss. It doesn't have to be literal loss, but it certainly can. And it's sitting on a very prominent angle in your chart, which has to do with the other, with the significant people in your life. Yeah. Is there anything in terms of what I said regarding your general temperament or your approach to life that resonated with you or did not resonate with you at all?
No, I think a lot of what you said resonated. Great and a lot of tendency to get stuck. I think for me, a takeaway was necessity to remain flexible. And I am very focused on relationships, but I do have a lot of caution and reserve when it comes to that. Letting people in or
All right. You're all good. And one of the things that I noticed in the relationships is, first of all, like the strong partner, but also, and this might be, it also looks like there's the potential for financial challenges within relationships too, where maybe your partner isn't as good with money, or like it looks like finances could be something where it's like you're at the core a very responsible person, like as Sarah was outlining. And it looks like your partner, the people who you end up partnering with, and I'm not, do you have somebody who you're with right now long term? But it looks like the finances and their lack of responsibility around even just their resources in general, like they can be really strong with themselves, but also maybe have some sense of that they're worth more than they actually are, or they're just not responsible as far as working with their finances as well as just their resources in general. And it looks like that could be possibly something that is an issue within your relationships as well. Has that been a thing?
yeah, I would say that's pretty.
And some of the other things that I picked up is just that there's also a part of you that's very happy and optimistic and able to connect with people. And even though you have this more reserved, I almost wonder if you took on the responsibility because of the environment that you grew up in to some degree. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But there is what we call an octile of Jupiter to your ascendant. And that can bring in this, whenever you fall, you end up coming back up to the surface. It's almost like with Jupiter aligned with your ascendant, you have the 9 lives thing. Like something bad happens and then something beneficial comes into your view, because even though you do have this very literal mind, that you also have buoyancy within this world as well, which I thought was really good. And you also have Sun and Jupiter in a good relationship with one another. It's called a sextile. And that indicates, my Sun and Jupiter right here. And that they're in a really close sextile with one another, which indicates that your vitality is really good. And having that Sun Jupiter just allows you, like, you're somebody who looks like you can work yourself to the bone, like somebody who's ready to get in there and take things apart, and do the work. Like, you're not afraid of work. In fact, work might be something that on some level helps you nurture yourself to some degree. You also have the moon in Capricorn, which reiterates that, which, like, work can be something that you come to in order to find solace, or there's something nurturing about getting something done and getting your hands dirty. But this Sun Jupiter allows you to some degree the vibrance, the endurance, also the physical ability to take on a lot of activities. This doesn't mean that you don't get worn out, because there's also things that point towards you running yourself to the ground pretty easily as well. But I know, I just thought those were some really nice, buoyant parts of your chart to lean into as well. But my side of this is looking at, so Sarah did what's called the ascendant descendant axis, which this is the eastern horizon when you were born, and was the western horizon when you were born. And then what I'm going to look at is the MC IC axis. And this was the highest point that the sun reached at the day you were born. And then this was the lowest part. So this is the cross of matter. It's a symbol that we see regularly within our world. But this is the you and other axis. And then this is my family and my career, basically. That's how we're dividing this up, just to give you an idea. Starting with your IC down here, your IC is represented by the sun up here. And this made me wonder if maybe your family ties you in some way to the greater community that you're a part of, that you've settled into as you've gotten older, just created resources in networking is part of who you are, and just the people that you surround yourself with. There's a suggestion that your family could exist in a bit of an unusual way, maybe march to the beat of their own drummer, particularly your father. And part of that, while that could create working independently, possibly having a family business, that your father could also create quite a bit of destabilization or inconsistencies within your household, especially your early years of growing up. Possibly there is a lot of fixed energy in your chart, which tells me that whatever this disruption was within your home and family, and specifically with your father, may have caused you to clamp on more to the things and be more resistant to change, because the things that may have been happening in the household, and specifically with your father, felt so jolting, that you really needed to create that stability for yourself, and also could have led you to taking on more responsibility, specifically as a child, than maybe you needed to. But it looks like there may have just been things within the household that may have required you in some way to be more responsible and take care of people as well. And what's that?
Go ahead.
No,
Go
go
ahead. No, I was just going to say, I had a really good childhood growing up. I don't remember there being any sort of anything happening or anything like that. Like, the only trauma or big thing that happened was the loss of my brother. And I think since then I've taken on a lot more responsibility because he's not here, but I don't remember it younger.
Yeah. And that could be part of it too. Does your dad work independently, or he looks like a jubilant, big personality.
Oh, he definitely has a big personality. He definitely marches to the beat of his own drum. He had his own company whenever I was growing up. He had his own company. And then there was about 10, 15 years that he worked for a company in construction. And now me and my mom and dad own a business here in Cortez.
Okay. All right. So the family business thing that all makes sense for sure.
I'm sitting here shaking my head, Jenna, because the astrology is really cool. It really matches your story because the planet that indicates your family is sitting next to the planet of money in your chart. And your dad is connected to this entrepreneurial signature. And then also all of that is taking place in a house that indicates some level of ambition or hopes and wishes. And then I also just wondered if your dad, in terms of his parenting style, functioned more as a friend to you than an authority figure, just because this is the house of friendship too. So your father is in this place of friendship in your chart.
Think that he was definitely the easiest. Like, I didn't get along with my mom. She always said yes because I'm the youngest girl, like I'm the baby. But he also, like, I was scared to, not scared of him, but disappointed him. He was the authority in the house, but very much daddy's little girl. And he's been my best friend for my whole life. So
Beautiful. And yeah, and we can see also that this is you up here. The Venus rules your ascendant, and you're in your house of career. So it makes sense that you're with your family and then your money's here and your career's up here, saying that you're not really working for anybody with your family. You're working autonomously. And while there's ways that Sara was speaking to that can be quite challenging with this square to Saturn here, and then you can also bring in this Pluto, and I'll get to that Pluto in a little bit. You need autonomy within your work life. And looking at your career, I was like, I wonder if she really needs to have that autonomy. It looks like you may have a hard time working with people. So you might be someone who could encounter conflict, not because of the way that you are, but maybe people just see that you can handle that because you're a strong personality. So that could have been something that before you started working for yourself and stepping into your own power like that, along with your family, that might have been something that kind of drove you to that decision, because working with other people could have been something that was just filled with a lot of conflict and opposition and grind, and maybe expecting more of you than was actually reasonable. But I did look at your mom as well, and it does look like there's a more crunchy mother story than a father story for sure. Has your mom always worked as well?
yeah, she still works for the city of Cortez. She's been at for 45 years.
Okay. Yeah. It looks like your mom's always been pretty involved in her work. Your dad as well. But, and I don't, there's only so many things that I can pull through from here, but there is an alignment in here. It's Moon Chiron. And that can suggest that there's just this mother wound. Your mom wasn't quite able to give you all of the things that you needed as a child. And I was wondering, just because there's so much involved in the chart from her perspective, her being involved in her work, I was like, I wonder if she's just working and stressed out so much. And also just the possibility of her feeling overwhelmed by trying to take care of the family and do all the work that she felt like she needed to do to support the family. And that maybe being some part of the ways that it was challenging for you to have a smooth relationship with her. But it does look like there's the potential that you're actually, the significator for you is pretty close to her first house up here, which you don't have to worry about the technicality of that, which made me wonder, do you look more like your mom? In some ways, is your personality a bit more like your mom's, which might be part of the clash that you encounter as well? And also you guys are in a square relationship with one another too, which indicates that there's a lot of friction around your relationship, but also a lot of learning. Squares require us to put in the work, and it's not always comfortable, but there are really beneficial outcomes that we can learn from that. While it does look like your mom may have provided more of the tension within your parental relationships, it does look like there's also a lot of personal growth for you within that relationship as well. Does that land at all, or?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I do look like her, and we do have a lot of the same personality, and which I do believe we just have clashed a lot. But we've had our ups and downs. But yeah,
I get it. I get it. Believe me.
Can I chime in, Lisa, really quick? And just because this moon in Capricorn, part of me just wondered if there was a piece with the mother of, in terms of how the love has expressed itself, if maybe you felt like you had to earn her love when you were young, or if there was a piece where somehow that nurturing was tied up with work, effort, performance, you taking things on some level. Because moon in Capricorn can be tricky in the sense that the moon represents in the chart fundamentally how we are nourished, our early experience of love, how we give love, how we receive love. And Capricorn implies some level of work and achievement. And so it's a tricky combination to have this nurturing emotional part of ourselves connected with applied effort and achievement. But I wonder if some of that came through the mother story as a feeling of you having to take responsibility or show up in a certain way to garner the affections of your mother.
I don't remember it being like that. No, she's always been very loving and nurturing. I was the pain in the butt and didn't want to be like close with her. She was always like wanting to be closer with me and loving and nurturing, but I don't feel like I had to earn it or do something in order to give love.
Okay. And one other thing, since we're on this topic of the moon, moon Chiron can indicate stomach or digestion issues. You encountered any of those?
Yeah. Yeah. In my old age, I still think I'm getting really bad, like indigestion and heartburn, and like I have a really upset stomach today.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. And okay. I'm sorry that you experienced that. And also any allergies or asthma, congestion, that sort of thing.
I don't have allergies. I don't have asthma. I woke up really congested this morning. Not like yeah, not a
Well,
regular thing.
cool. Right. So I guess the last little bit that we have here is your career. And we already touched on this, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But it looks like partnership is really central to your work, which I already spoke to. And you're embodying that, I think, this partnership through this with your family and your money all being combined together. But like I said, I think that's also something that you've had to move into as you've gotten older. And it looks like, and I think I already said this, that there's some part of you that really needs to work independently or be the boss in some ways, because you're really good at knowing what people need to be doing and bridging it because you're Venusian, but also just here's what we need to do, people. You have a very logical mind, which can be great when you're in the role of the boss. It can also work against you and make you too self-critical and lead towards things like depression and that sort of thing. But within the realm of your work, it can be really beneficial and pull you out of some of the more negative ways that this Mercury can show up by stepping into authority and holding your own authority. And that's a lot of what this Venus Saturn is, as well as this Pluto, which I pointed to before. And it's just how to step into your own power, how to be the one where the buck stops with you, basically, and owning that for yourself, where it looks like there's the potential also in relationships too, like any sort of partnership where you may have had a time in your life where you gave too much of that to other people. And because there's all of this, like this whole area right here, the Pluto, Saturn, Mars right here is all the Pluto's technically, it's in your sixth house, which doesn't really apply to that. But it does because it's an aspect to Venus, which is our relationships. So there's a way in your relationships where you may have given your power to other people. You may have given all of your strength to other people in the ways that you're a badass. And you've had to pull that in and be like, no, I'm the badass. I'm the one who has all of those things that I keep projecting onto other people. And I suspect that may have, even through what Sarah touched on before, that the events of loss with the Mars Saturn, that event may have really, while it was obviously like the most horrific thing that's happened in your life and that will ever happen in your life, that it really pulled you into your strength in some way and transformed you. Not to say that losing those who we love is a gift, but there's always a gift in the darkness. And some of that may have been for you to step into that. And then I think your chart really speaks to that process very clearly. That's actually a process that's central to your lifetime while you're here this time. So
There's a general note about relationship. I just see more and more the more I look, but Saturn rules the house of education, career, and networks and friendship. And so that this may be a place where you find partners coming from, either through you end up working with them or they're friends that become romantic. And then also the partner is ruled by a planet that also rules the 12th house, which is a place of, this puts the partner in a place of stress. So it would be another sort of caution, like for you going forward, is if you've already lived into that experience of a partner in duress in a really stressful place in life, it's going to create some hardship. And there may be things you don't initially see about the partner either. The 12th house can be a place of, it can be a place of hidden things. It's also a place of hidden enemies, Lisa.
yeah, absolutely.
And so to think that the romantic partner could be a hidden enemy or could be sabotaging your well-being in some way.
Yeah, it's a tricky combination to have. And it's not one that's always top of mind when you're looking at a chart, but when it all corroborates with the same thing, definitely.
And there's a strong developmental pressure in your chart, both in love and in work, to really create something of lasting value.
Mhm.
So even if it doesn't come easily or readily or in life, if it's something you end up having to work for, there are indications in your chart that speak to you traversing that and hopefully building something really solid.
Mhm. Yeah. And I guess, so I took your chart and I brought it to the dial real quick. We're not going to do that right now, just in honor of time. But you do have some nice alignments for relationship as well. So I just want to put that out there that you could still find that person out there. And I think a lot of it has to do with Uranus is really tied into your relationships and your connections as well. And I see that on the dial as well as in your chart too. So I'm looking at this right here, and then this comes across here, and then we have the sun and the southern bending here. And that's a pretty strong picture for, first of all, this could be another corroboration for sudden loss of a man in your life. But it can also be finding the independence for yourself. There's invitations in your chart to work outside of the box or find people who are independent, but you might keep finding people who are too independent or too outside of the box or too independable. And figuring out where that balance is between the exciting and unique partner who's going to feed you and the volatile, unpredictable, destructive partner who's going to deplete you. And really meditating on how can you balance that. It looks like it's a real challenge in your chart. And that doesn't mean that it's insurmountable. It just means that's the invitation of where to grow. And maybe for you, sometimes releasing the tendency to feel like you need to control things and doing that for yourself more so than others. What parts of yourself do you hold so tight to because you feel like things will go haywire if you don't? And because the more you can let that go and invite your own fun in, because there's a lot of that in your chart too. But as we get older, we can tend to lean more into our survival instincts. I just wonder if that could be a place to play with for you, is letting go in order to navigate the partners who you could potentially bring in, but bringing in a more healthy version of Uranus, a more healthy version of the unpredictable. It feels less destructive.
Yeah, I think it's something that I could work on here. The loss of control or letting go is scary because I associate it with my accident and losing my brother. And so I am working in therapy and all the fun stuff on that. And I believe when I'm ready to let somebody into my life, like letting go of that control is something that I want to do and like work towards. I then burned, you were talking about the partner in the 12th house. Excuse me, hidden things and enemies, and my recent ex definitely sabotaged and done a lot of shady things in the last 8 months that has all come to light. So I'm leaning toward just being a crazy cat lady, right?
Power to the crazy cat ladies.
I have to just say it because you are represented in your chart by Venus, which also rules the house of pets smaller than a goat, which does say something about you, like connecting with animals.
I love animals, and if I could afford it, I would rescue all of them. But for now, it's one.
Perfect. There's plenty of time to expand.
So have we covered it, Lisa?
I think so. I guess I just wanted to point out, and maybe you can speak to them, because actually Sarah's chart aligns with yours in a lot of ways, and she's been having similar transits to some degree, if you don't mind me saying that, Sarah. And from June 2023 to March 2024, you had Uranus conjunct your ascendant, and then March 2024 until October 2025, you have Pluto conjunct your MC. So I'll just state the details, and then Sarah can speak to what those represent.
Okay. So the Uranus on the ascendant actually might be in part what you're going through with sort of the discovery of this X, like some of the things that were going on, because it can just be an element of shock, of surprise, of instability, of changing perceptions. It can bring anxiety. It can bring a desire to liberate yourself in some way, to show up in a different way. And in astrology, there's always things happening on just so many levels. And so there's the big themes of us as souls moving through space, but there's also just like the little things. Uranus on the ascendant can just be wanting to change your look, get a haircut, just even like reinvent yourself in smaller ways. And, right now it's traversing that first house for you of the body. And so if there's anything that you have felt in terms of an impetus to change your routines or the way you relate to your body or your identity or how you're tending to yourself, this transit supports all of that. And at the same time, like Lisa said, you're getting Pluto on your career point. Everything Lisa said about Pluto and wanting to empower you in some way, wanting you to come into your own authority, but also to really think about the reins of control in your life, particularly in the workplace. What kind of power do you have? What kind of charisma do you exhibit in work? How do you influence people? How can you show up more strongly? And if there's anything you want for yourself in terms of your work, I would say go for it right now. If there's some ways in which you think you can be more empowered or take risks, which is another component of that Uranus on the ascendant, like it's okay right now to take a risk, even if that risk means some level of loss or having to let go in some way of something, or let go of the reins, let go of some of the control, let go in an effort to come into something new and something that empowers you in a much greater way. That's what you're looking at just in terms of the transits happening right now.
And it's emphasized because at the same time, you'll also be experiencing your Pluto square Pluto transit, which is something that everybody encounters around this early 40s and late 30s. And that Pluto is actually in a square relationship to your MCIC axis. So this is really this Pluto that's going to be transiting up here is really going to be, I think you're going to see a huge change in who you are as a person. Just really, and Sarah said, it could involve some level of breaking down and letting go of some parts of yourself that aren't serving you anymore, which sounds very cliche. But sometimes with Pluto, I'm not really sure. It's how it is, but it also is so much more. And is also, it just the deep transformation of going deep into yourself and finding self-limiting beliefs and patterns that don't allow you to step into your power anymore. And in order to move forward through this part in your life over the next couple years, just keep that in mind. It sounds like you're working with a therapist, and like Sarah said, don't be afraid to. In fact, the more you step into any ideas that you have that you may be scared of, that's the direction you need to go. And with Pluto, almost if it makes you scared, but it makes you feel uncomfortable, then that is your north arrow for these next couple years. Of course, working with therapists, that sort of thing is good. But
I have found with these Pluto transits that sometimes it is hard to identify it when you're in it. This might be
yeah.
that kind of thing where you, a few years from now, reflect back on this period of your life and really see it as almost a page turning, a chapter where you shifted from one place in your life to really stepping forward into the next iteration of who you're going to live into for a period of time. And so this is like right now, just a time to look for the breadcrumbs, like whatever indications you can get, like what is trying to, like Lisa said, in terms of patterns or revisiting stories or rewriting stories about yourself. Follow the breadcrumb. You'll see in a few years what was being birthed during this time that is really helping you show up in a more empowered way. And it is interesting because it does in your chart. This is really hitting you as a personal you, your sense of identity and how you're seen, like in the outside world, and your legacy and how you show up in work and how you're connecting with people out in the world. So identity and your reputation out there.
as well as your relationship to your ancestry and your family and land, any of those things that strike true for you. It's just interesting that Pluto's so close to this part of your chart, which is all the things we can't see, where this is all the things we can see. So I like to describe this axis as a tree where you have the roots down here that we can't see. And then up here is all the pretty flowers and stuff, and the way that the branches are. But with Pluto too, yes, it's definitely affecting your identity and how you're putting yourself out there in the world. But also, it's so dependent upon how you nurture yourself and what you're connected to from the past and in the earth and through any sort of depths of memory, or get creative. I don't know what might really resonate for you, but what can other people not see? And maybe you can't even see, but you can just feel it in the core of your being, is really what's being triggered here. I'm glad that you have somebody to work with through this time, and encourage you to I'm excited for you, honestly. I think that when I've been in these transits, I've often found myself on the floor in a pile of goo. But it's one of those times that I look back and that's when everything changed. That's when it clicked for me that I can't do this anymore. And invite in the piles of goo and see what you can learn from them, and just make sure you have good support, because you don't have to do it all by yourself, which you may try to do. I see you.
Thank you very much, Jenna, for sharing some of your life and story with us
Yeah, thank you
today.
so much. Thank you. As always, thanks for listening to Broadcast Astrology Insight for Humans. And if you're so inclined, like, follow, and subscribe, and please don't be a stranger.
Signing off for now. Until next time, humans, keep your gaze upwards on the stars and be well. We look forward to sharing more soon.